You know, the very famous Where's Waldo books. You look through and, like we're all familiar with that, right? You got to find Waldo, and Waldo's in there somewhere. They're wildly popular, and I think the person who came up with the Where's Waldo ended up becoming a multi-millionaire. I'm doing a Where is the Scripture? So I'm experimenting with it. We bury the Scripture in the presentation, and Jacob has to find it. So he found it today. Good job. I think I'm onto something here. That's operator error. When I was putting them in, I just rearranged them wrong. We've been talking about the cycle of loving your neighbors. It's the second greatest commandment, to love your neighbors as yourself, which means we get into the lives of our neighbors, we love on them, and we treat them the way that we would expect to be treated. And then we move to teaching them who God is. We introduce them to the Word, we introduce them to God, and we allow them to fall in love with God. It's the greatest commandment in all of the Scriptures. To love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And then to move loving people and people who love God, moving each other to serving others. If we don't serve other people, James says that our faith is useless. It's a pretty powerful word. Our faith is useless if it's not accompanied by works. And then he gives examples. And he says if you see somebody who needs clothes, or you see somebody who's sick and you wish them well, you're not living your faith out. We've got to live our faith out. We've got to serve each other, serve other people, and move people back to loving neighbors, loving God, serving others. Our theme this year is becoming the hands and the feet of Jesus, and our theme verses come from Matthew 25, 37 through 40. Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you a drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will answer them, truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me. Very powerful passage, and Jesus goes on to talk about the separation of the sheep from the goats. The sheep, obviously, in the story, are the people who they took action. They took action and they fed people when they were hungry. They clothed people when they were naked, and they gave a drink of water to people who were thirsty. They went on to heaven. The goats represent the people who saw people who were hungry and didn't feed them. They saw people who were naked and didn't clothe them. And they saw people who were thirsty and they didn't offer them a drink. And Jesus says those people will be separated regardless of where you think you're going. You'll be separated based on how we treated our neighbors, how we treated other people. And I think that's powerful. That ought to wake every single one of us up. I think it's fair to say that life throws some interesting twists and curves along the way. Have any of us experienced that throughout life? Anyone? Yeah, probably. Life can be tough. Life can be hard. Life can be challenging. Life can be a menace. Life is difficult. I think even in the best of circumstances, life is really difficult. What can make life unbearable is when we take a difficult life and we make things harder. Does anybody know that person who just, no matter what they do, it's like, you really are going to do that? Like you're literally taking the longest route, the hardest route, the most difficult, challenging path that you could possibly take. Why are you making life so difficult? We all know that person. Some of us might be that person. We all know somebody in our life who just makes things harder than it has to be. And no matter what you do, the more you do things and accomplish things, I call them the undoers. They undo or unravel things. It's like they come behind you and you're knitting this sweater and you're putting so much time and dedication and thought and process into making this beautiful knitted sweater, and literally somebody's coming behind you like, what's this string do? and they're just unraveling this thing far faster than you can make it. Why do people have to make things harder than it has to be? Because they can. Because we're human, right? We do things that are dumb things sometimes. A lot of times we don't think about it, we don't process, we just do it. And we're like, oh, look at this shiny thing over here. Like we're chasing all these different things. And we're chasing those things that are absolutely wrecking our life. They're wrecking progress. They're wrecking, we talked about it in the adult Bible class this morning, they're wrecking self-discipline. They're wrecking all these things in our lives, and we're chasing them because they look shiny and they look fun and they look new and they look exciting, and we're curious and we want to try it and we want to do this and we want to live life and we want to do this experience, and we're just unraveling. I love Deuteronomy 28 because I'm knocking my glasses off. I'm a hand talker. Darn Italians. Huh, Granny? We talk with our hands. Deuteronomy 28, God lists side by side. It's actually in 2 columns. If you look in your Bible, you'll see the one column, which are the blessings that God will give people who are obedient to him. The other side are the curses for people when they're disobedient to God. And he lays it out almost so structurally that it's mechanical. That God's like, look, if when you go into the land that I promised I was going to give to you, you go into the land flowing with milk and honey, all you have to do is obey me. Obey my commandments, and I will pass these blessings on to you. However, if you insist on making your life more difficult, if you insist on doing things and chasing things and just going after whatever the naked eye sees, and you rush after these things, I will pronounce these curses on you, and your life will be hard. I'm going to reread what Jacob read for us this morning. We're only going to read the first part of Deuteronomy 28 because it is a very lengthy chapter. And there's a reason why so much ink was spilled to talk about obedience versus disobedience. It says, and if you faithfully obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all his commandments that I command you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations on earth. Think about that for a second. We talked about the 90-10 in Bible class. If you were in the adult class this morning, you know what I'm talking about. We determined pretty quickly that 90% of people, that includes us, 90% of people lack basic self-discipline and self-control. 90% of people, doesn't matter what country you're from, what culture you're from, 90% of people lack self-control. That means that we're impulsive. That means that we see urges or have urges and we chase those urges. God says if you become the 10%, if you are self-controlled and you simply do what I command you, I will set you high above all the nations on planet Earth. No matter what country it is, no matter what culture it is, you're going to be set high above all of the nations on earth. And all these blessings shall come upon you, and, I love this language, overtake you. Right? Sometimes when we talk in terms of blessing, it's like, oh, I pray that God blesses me and God gives me these blessings. No, they don't use give language in Deuteronomy. It says his blessings will overtake you. They will rule your life. They will direct you, they'll guide you, and they'll be your beacon. and the fruit of your cattle, the increase of your herds, and the young of your flock. Blessed shall be your basket and your kneading bowl. Blessed shall you be when you come in, and blessed shall you be when you go out. Talking this morning about frustrations of farming. It's been a very frustrating season, I think, probably for every farmer. It's been a very difficult and challenging season. And I don't want people to look at this and be like, oh, like, you know, if you're faithful to God, you click your heels and you're going to ride on this little cloud about 6 feet off of the ground, and you're just going to be able to like snooze, and God's going to carry you on all these dreams and hopes, and life is going to be easy and great, and you're just going to abound in everything. That's not what God's talking about in Deuteronomy. Life is hard. All of us, I don't care how faithful you are, all of us are going to face hardships. We're going to face hard times in life. We're going to face challenging times. Some people might face persecution. There are all kinds of things that come our way. Ask Paul. The Apostle Paul was very clear about all the things and challenges that he faced throughout his ministry. He was very faithful, and he experienced pain that I don't wish on any of us. I don't wish it on my worst enemy. So it's not the lack of pain or harmful things or discouraging things or hard times. You know, it's not the lack of that. But what he's saying is when you face those hard times, I'm going to get you through that. I'm going to bless you through that, and these blessings will overtake you. And you begin to learn things like discipline and self-control. You learn how to manage and how to work through those things, and how to problem solve, and how to help other people make it through hard times because you've been there. I think a lot of times we think of blessings in these really bizarre American ways. Terry, you mentioned hitting the lottery. You know, like some of those people just hit the slot machines, and it seems like they just have good luck. And I say there is no good thing, no such thing as good luck. There might be fortune and misfortune, but eventually your luck runs out. You know, if we're looking at it that way, your luck runs out eventually. There is no such thing as good luck. There's only hard work, discipline, managing resources, managing time. And so when trouble strikes, and it will strike, we learn how to navigate and work through that. What does Jesus say? Come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy laden or heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Take your yoke upon me. And it's this idea of working, plowing together, sharing the load with Jesus. We've got to stop looking at blessings as, you know, the health and wealth. God's just going to bless you and life's going to be easy for you. It's not what he's talking about in Deuteronomy 28. But this is what the blessings versus the curses look like. If you're obedient, God says, I will set you high above all the nations. You'll be blessed in the city and blessed in the country. On the other hand, if you're disobedient, you'll be cursed in the city and cursed in the country. Confusion and rebuke in all that you do. Like I said, the people who unravel things, the people who undo things, the people who make really poor decisions. You ever hear people who are in and out of jail all the time? Anybody have experience with people who are in and out of jail? What are some of the, you guys can say them out loud. What are some of the phrases that they say? Yeah, I was minding my own business, and these cops, they're just always after me. What else? Never again. How about I'm fill in the blank? What? I'm innocent. I didn't do it. They just targeted me. Right? People who have that mentality, people who have a destructive mentality, they lie to themselves and say, well, life is just unfair. People are just out to target me. I'm looking around the room. I don't know the answer to this, but how How many of you have been in prison? For a crime. Not visiting. I don't see any hands go up. DP went to prison for 2 weeks? Oh, worked in the prison. I thought you said went to prison. I was like, we got to hear this story. I'll move over and give you that microphone. In jail for 8 hours? So like short stays here. There you go. So, like occasional bad decisions. But none of you have been in and out of jail. None of you feel like life is just out to get you. But people who make really bad decisions, who unravel, who are destructive, they don't produce, they tear things apart. They have this mentality that everybody's out to get them. It's always somebody else's fault. But God says these are curses when you're disobedient. You break the law, you break my commandments, your life is going to be full of confusion and rebuke in all that you do. You're going to be cursed in the city, you're going to be cursed in the country. It doesn't matter where you go, where you live, you can't run from your life. How about agriculture and provision? God says, blessed, if you're obedient, you're going to have blessed fruit of your ground and increase of your herds. Doesn't mean that death isn't going to happen, all right? It happens. You're going to lose animals. You're going to have years where it's just a bad year. But overall, God says, you come into this land and you're obedient, the fruit of your ground and the increase of your herds will happen. Your basket and kneading bowl will be blessed. The Lord will open the heavens and give rain in its season. He's been doing that a lot lately, right? How about the curses? If you disobey God, the fruit of your ground will be cursed. The decrease of your herds will happen. You'll begin losing herds, and slowly, I introduced the expression to my kids recently, death by 1,000 cuts. It's when we buy coffee at the store. Like it's a lot of times that term is used for finances. We buy the coffee at Starbucks, the $8 cup of coffee. Then the next day we're like, you only live once. And then, you go to Kennywood. There's another $40. And on and on. Like you're constantly doing these things, and then at the end of the month, you're like, how am I in the red? Death by 1,000 cuts. And so farming, God says your agriculture, your crops, and your herds will be death by 1,000 cuts. They'll slowly dwindle away. Your basket and kneading bowl, the heavens will be like bronze and the earth like iron. The ground will be hard from lack of rain. How about family and health? If you're obedient to God, God says, blessed will be the fruit of your womb. That doesn't mean that people won't be barren. I know people who are incredibly faithful Christians who cannot have children. And they end up, through some form or fashion or grit, determination, or understanding or wisdom or whatever it is, they end up adopting and having beautiful, beautiful families. The Lord will take away all sickness from you. That doesn't mean we won't get sick. But God provides over and over. You see it throughout the Scriptures, especially when Jesus came to earth. You find ways where sickness gets healed, where people come together, where people honor each other, and they're there for each other, and they support each other, and they mourn together, and they just work together. There's unity. When you're disobedient, however, God says, cursed shall be the fruit of your womb. The Lord will strike you with wasting disease, fever, boils, tumors, scurvy, and itch. Ugh. I don't want to be disobedient. It's making my skin crawl. But we've looked around and we've seen Disease. Here in America, we've had a radical increase in cancers, in inflammation diseases. We have some nurses in here who might be able to confirm, like major inflammation issues, bowel issues, chronic colon issues and colon cancers, all like a dramatic increase, heart disease, high blood pressure, a dramatic increase since right about the 1950s. Now, I'm not saying it's because people are disobedient to God, but we're making really bad decisions. All the garbage that we put into our food, the processed food that we have. By the way, kids, what's in a hot dog? I was waiting for nobody knows. Nobody knows. Saturday Night Live skit that was actually a clean one. What's in a hot dog? Nobody knows. We don't know what's in a hot dog. We don't. We have so many foods that are just processed junk. God says you make bad decisions, destruction will happen. How about victory and security? If you're obedient, God says, your enemies will be defeated before you. You will lend to many nations, but borrow from none. Curses. You'll be defeated before your enemies. A fierce nation will besiege you in all your gates. Did we ever see this happen in Israel's history? And I'm not talking about current history. I'm talking about in Israel, in the Bible. Do we ever see places where they were disobedient and a fierce nation came in? You ever hear of the Assyrians? You ever hear of the Babylonians? God warned and warned and warned and warned his people till he could not warn them anymore. And in 722 BC, the Assyrians came in. They besieged the northern 10 tribes. And in 586 BC, Babylon came in and they absolutely annihilated Jerusalem. They tore down the temple and they exiled masses of people. National standing or reputation. If you're obedient, God says, you'll be established as a holy people. All peoples of the earth will see you are called by the Lord's name, and they will fear you. You will be the head and not the tail. If you're disobedient, however, you'll become an object of horror. I love that expression. You ever see anybody, right? We're talking about people who are always in trouble. You ever see people and you just look and you're like, you are an object, you're a literal object of horror. We've seen people who are objects of horror. Literally everything they touch dissolves, it falls apart, it wrecks other people's lives. They're an object of horror. God says you'll be a proverb and a mockery. You will be the tail and not the head. How about the psychological state? Pretty important to have a pretty solid psychological state. For obedience, there's the implied joy, peace, security that results from God's favor and provision. The curse is God will strike you with madness, blindness, and confusion of heart. You will grope at noonday like a blind man in the dark. You ever see people tweaked out on really bad drugs? Probably most of us have seen it, even kids. We've seen people like pretty tweaked out. Remember, Natalie and I visited her favorite place, well, our favorite place, Orlando, Florida. By favorite, I mean literal least favorite in the United States. Orlando, Florida is like, that's a no-go zone for us. But we saw what I thought, what appeared to be somebody who was on Flocka. You guys, like, it's not real common up here, but anybody know what Flocka is? It's called the zombie drug. You ever hear about it? You don't hear about it much in the north. Huge in Florida. It gives people superhuman strength, and anytime that there's a call for suspected Flocka, they'll send a minimum of 4 people. That includes EMS, police, fire department, because they need the manpower, and even with four is typically not enough. They literally get superhuman strength. And there are videos, you can find them on YouTube, so it's actually legit. They can break leather straps, they can break handcuffs, and they do, in fact, try to devour people. They're so messed up in their mind from the drug that they think people are zombies, and they try to eat them, literally. Flakka's no joke, and it's a really rampant drug. You make bad decisions, God says, you be disobedient. There's going to be madness, blindness, confusion of heart. You'll grope at noonday like a blind man in the dark. There's no aim, no purpose, no direction, no confidence. There are consequences for sin. Possessions and labor. The Lord will bless all your work of your hand. You will abound in prosperity. The opposite of that. If you're disobedient, you'll build a house but not live in it. You'll plant a vineyard but not enjoy its fruit. A foreign nation will consume the fruit of your labor. And again, we saw this happen with Israel after they entered the promised land. And I'll go back, I'll finish by rereading this. And if you faithfully obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all of his commandments that I command you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations of the earth. And all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you if you obey the voice of the Lord your God. Blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the field. Blessed shall the fruit of your womb, and the fruit of your ground, and the fruit of your cattle, the increase of your herds, and the young of your flock. Blessed shall be your basket and your kneading bowl. Blessed shall you be when you come in, and blessed shall you be when you go out. My question that I leave you with today is, which life do we choose? Now, it's not a hard decision when it's put this way, is it? There are a lot of things that a lot of us could have gotten ourselves into. A lot. But we chose not to do those things. What was the reason? Well, because the Bible says so. That wasn't really my reason. Growing up, didn't do drugs, didn't get into that kind of garbage. I had no desire. You know why? I looked around and saw the consequences of the actions of friends of mine. Constantly in trouble, getting in car accidents. Any of us have friends who lost their lives due to a drunk driving accident? Yep, a bunch of us have. That stuff changes you. And you make a vow and you say, God, I will honor you with my life. And I'm going to choose the road of blessing and avoid the road of curse. God says all you have to do is follow me, listen to my commandments, do my commandments, put these into practice. So I want to encourage you today not only to continue doing the commandments of God, but teach other people, because there are people who are perishing every single day who don't get a second chance. They make bad decisions, they do bad things, and their lives are gone forever, and it wrecks families. So let's encourage other people. Let's teach them who God is. Let's teach them the commandments of God, and be vocal about it. God will overtake us with his blessings. If you haven't been baptized and you're ready, and we have water behind me, it's ready to go. If you have prayer needs, we'd encourage you to come up too, as we all stand and sing this together.